The space station known as Horizon 7 was a marvel of human and alien engineering, a floating city in the vast emptiness of space. It orbited a distant exoplanet called Lyrionine, glowing faintly blue against the blackness of the cosmos. Inside the station, life buzzed with activity. People from all corners of the galaxy, humans, aliens, and hybrids lived, worked, and studied together. But not everyone felt welcome. Krel was one of those who didn't belong. He wasn't human. His skin shimmered like liquid sapphire, catching the light in ways that made people stare. His large, round eyes blinked slowly, taking in his surroundings. With an air of quiet curiosity, tentacle-like appendages sprouted from his shoulders, wriggling slightly whenever he moved. To most of the students at Horizon 7 High School, Krell looked strange, even unsettling. And because he was different, he became a target. It was lunchtime on a typical school day, and the cafeteria was alive with chatter. The room hummed with laughter, clinking trays, and the occasional argument over seating arrangements. Krell sat alone at a small table near the corner, far away from the clusters of friends, laughing and sharing stories. His tray held something, greenish and gelatinous, a dish native to his home planet. He poked at it gently with a fork, though he didn't seem particularly hungry. Instead, his gaze drifted toward the other tables, where groups of students huddled together, their conversations blending into a steady murmur. He wished he could join them. Not just any group would do. Even sitting silently at the edge of someone else's circle would have been better than this loneliness. But every time he tried to approach, they either ignored him or made jokes about how weird he looked. Once, someone had even flicked one of his tentacles, causing it to curl instinctively. That moment still stung, though it had happened weeks ago. At another table nearby, Brad and his friends were deep in conversation, or rather, Brad was talking while the others listened. Brad was tall for his age, with messy blonde hair and a confident grin that seemed permanently etched onto his face. He wore the standard uniform of Horizon Savina, sleek gray jacket with the school emblem, but somehow, he managed to look cooler in it than anyone else. His voice carried across the cafeteria as he recounted a story about winning a zero-gravity basketball game. And then, Brett said, leaning back dramatically, I spun around, shot the ball, and bam, right through the hoop. His friends erupted into cheers, slapping him on the back. Brad basked in the attention, soaking up every second of admiration. But then his sharp blue eyes landed on Krell. A smirk spread across his face. Hey, check out Blue Blob over there, he said loudly enough for half the cafeteria to hear. What's he eating? Some kind of alien slime? Laughter rippled through the room. His head turned toward Krell, who froze mid-bite, his cheeks flushed. If such a thing were possible with his translucent blue skin, and he quickly lowered his head, pretending to focus on his food. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the metallic walls of the cafeteria. Maybe we should ask him if he tastes like jellyfish, Brad continued, standing up and walking toward Krell's table. His friends trailed behind him, snickering. Other students watched, some amused, others uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. No one wanted to cross Brad. Krell's heart pounded as Brad loomed over him, tried to shrink into his seat, hoping the older boy would lose interest and move on. Brad wasn't done yet. So, Blob, he said, planting both hands on the table and leaning forward, what's your deal? Do you even speak English? Krell swallowed hard. Yes, he replied softly, his voice barely audible above the din of the cafeteria. Speak many languages. Brad raised an eyebrow. So you're smart, huh? Big brain under all that goo? He reached out and tapped one of Krell's tentacles, making it twitch involuntarily. More laughter erupted from the crowd. Krell flinched, pulling his arm closer to his body. Amelia noticed the scene from her spot at the far end of the cafeteria. She had been quietly sipping her drink, lost in thought, when the commotion began. Amelia was new to Horizon 7, having transferred only a few months ago after her father accepted a research position at the station's xenobiology lab. She wasn't particularly popular, nor did she try to be. With her dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail and her plain uniform free of accessories, she blended into the background easily as she watched Brad torment Krell. A knot formed in her stomach. Recognized the look on Krell's face the same. defeated expression she'd worn countless times during her own childhood. Back on Earth, before moving to the station, Amelia had endured her share of teasing. Kids mocked her for being too quiet, for reading books instead of playing sports. For being different? She knew what it felt like to sit alone, wishing anyone would step in and make the pain stop. Yet here she was, doing nothing. Just like everyone else, Brad finally stepped away from Krell's table, satisfied with the reaction he'd gotten. "See you later, Blob," he called over his shoulder as he returned to his friends. They high-fived and resumed their earlier conversation, acting as though nothing unusual had happened. Meanwhile, Krell remained seated, staring down at his tray. His meal was untouched now, his appetite gone. Amelia glanced around the cafeteria, searching for signs of compassion. Surely someone would say something. Maybe a teacher would step in. The other students went back to their meals, avoiding eye contact with Krell. Even the teachers, stationed near the walls, appeared oblivious. Chatting amongst themselves, a wave of guilt washed over Amelia. She hated seeing cruelty go unchecked. Yet fear held her back. What could she possibly do? She was just one person, and Brad was, well, Brad. Standing up to him meant risking becoming a target herself. Still, as she packed up her things and prepared to leave, she couldn't shake the image of Krell sitting alone, humiliated and hurt. Later that evening, Amelia lay awake in her bunk, staring at the ceiling of her cramped quarters. Her roommate, a bubbly girl named Lily, was already asleep, her breathing soft and rhythmic. Outside the window, stars twinkled faintly, reminders of the endless universe beyond the station's walls. Amelia's mind replayed the events of the day. She kept thinking about Krell, the way his shoulders hunched when Brad leaned over him, the way his voice trembled when he spoke. She wondered what his life must be like, constantly surrounded by people who judged him based on appearances. Did he have any friends? Did he enjoy anything about living on Horizon 7? Or was every day a struggle? Her thoughts drifted to her own family. Her father, Dr. Robert Carter, spent most of his time studying alien ecosystems. Sometimes he brought home fascinating specimens, plants that glowed in the dark, creatures with bioluminescent patterns. Through his work, Amelia had learned to appreciate the beauty of diversity, the incredible variety of life forms scattered across the galaxy. Why, then, did so many people react with fear or hostility when faced with something unfamiliar? She sighed, rolling onto her side. Sleep eluded her. Tomorrow was another school day, and she knew she'd see Krell again. The question nagged at her. Would she continue to stay silent, or would she find the courage to do anything to help? For now, the answer remained unclear. But deep down, Amelia hoped she wouldn't let fear dictate her actions forever. The next morning, Amelia woke up feeling restless. She had spent most of the night tossing and turning, replaying the cafeteria scene in her mind. Krell's face, his wide round eyes filled with shame, kept appearing in her thoughts. She didn't know him well, but she couldn't shake the image of how lonely he looked. It reminded her too much of herself back on Earth, and kids would tease her for being quiet or different. Breakfast was a quick affair. Amelia grabbed a piece of toast and headed to school early, hoping to avoid running into anyone before class started. The corridors of Horizon 7 High were quiet at this hour, the hum of machinery and distant footsteps echoing softly. The calmness of these moments, before the chaos of students rushing between classes took over as she walked, Amelia spotted Krell ahead of her, moving slowly toward his locker. His tentacles twitched slightly as he fumbled with the combination. Lock? He seemed nervous, glancing around as if expecting trouble. Amelia hesitated for a moment, then decided to approach him. "Hey," she said softly, standing a few steps away so she wouldn't startle him. Krell turned quickly, his large eyes widening in surprise. A second he looked like he wasn't sure what to say. Then he managed a small nod. "Hello." Amelia shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of how awkward she must seem. "I just wanted to see if you're okay, after yesterday. I mean," Krell blinked slowly, tilting his head slightly. "Okay, yes, I am. Functional." He paused, his voice dropping even lower. "But it is not easy here." Amelia nodded, understanding more than she could put into words. Yeah, I get it. People can be not very nice sometimes. They do not understand me, Krell admitted, looking down at his hands. And they do not try. Amelia felt a pang of sadness. That's not your fault. You shouldn't have to change who you are because of them. Krell looked at her curiously, as if unsure whether to trust her words. Thank you, he said finally, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Before Amelia could respond, the bell rang, signaling the start of the day. Students began pouring into the hallway, their voices filling the air. Krell quickly closed his locker and hurried off, disappearing into the crowd. Amelia watched him go, wondering if she had made any difference at all. Later that afternoon, during biology class, things took a turn for the worse. The teacher, Mr. Henson, assigned a group project requiring students to work together to analyze samples from an alien plant species. Naturally, no one wanted to partner with Krell. When it came time to form groups, Krell stood by himself near the back of the room, clutching his notebook tightly. Amelia sat 2 rows away, debating what to do. She glanced at her current groupmates, a boy named Ethan and a girl named Mian, felt torn. They weren't exactly close friends, but they weren't unfriendly either. Still, something about leaving Krell isolated gnawed at her conscience. I'll switch, she blurted out suddenly, surprising even herself. Both Ethan and Mia looked confused, but Mr. Henson simply shrugged and told her to move. When Amelia joined Krell, he looked startled. You want to work with me? He asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Yeah, Amelia replied, trying to sound casual. Why not? Krell hesitated, then nodded slowly. Thank you, I will try my best. Over the next hour, they worked quietly side by side. Krell proved to be surprisingly knowledgeable about the plant sample, pointing out details that neither Amelia nor anyone else in the class had noticed. His insights impressed Mr. Henson, who praised their teamwork during the final review. For the first time since arriving at Horizon 7, Krell seemed to relax a little. He even smiled faintly when Amelia complimented his observations. They didn't talk much beyond the project. Amelia felt a small sense of accomplishment. Maybe helping someone didn't always require grand gestures. Could start with something as simple as including them. After class, Amelia lingered behind to pack up her things. As she zipped up her bag, she overheard a snippet of conversation. Coming from the hallway was Brad and his friends, laughing about Krell again. Did you see him today? Brad said loudly. He actually thought he could keep up in biology. Pathetic. His friends chuckled along, but one of them, a lanky boy named Ryan, glanced toward Amelia. Hey, wasn't that the girl who switched groups with him? Brad's sharp gaze swung toward Amelia. She froze, realizing she'd been spotted listening. Her heart raced as he approached, his confident stride making her feel smaller by the second. So, Amelia, Brad said, leaning casually against the doorway. What's the deal? You hanging out with Blob now? Amelia forced herself to meet his eyes. His name's Krell, she said evenly, though her voice wavered slightly. Brad smirked. Whatever, why waste your time on someone like him? You're better than that. The comment stung, but Amelia refused to let it show. I don't think there's anything wrong with helping someone, she replied, gripping her bag strap tightly. Brad raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Helping? Or trying to be some kind of hero? Trust me, no one cares about Blob. Not even you. His words hit harder than Amelia expected. Wanted to argue, to tell him how wrong he was, but the weight of his confidence and the presence of his friends made her hesitate. Instead, she muttered, Just leave him alone, okay? Brad laughed, shaking his head. Whatever you say, Amelia. But don't come crying to us when he drags you down with him. With that, he turned and walked away, his friends trailing after him. Amelia exhaled sharply, her hands trembling. She hated confrontations, especially ones where she felt outnumbered. Yet despite the unease settling in her chest, she couldn't deny the truth. Standing up to Brad felt right, even if it scared her. That evening, Amelia found herself thinking about her parents' research. Her father often talked about the importance of understanding other species, of learning from their differences instead of fearing them. Over dinner, he launched into one of his usual lectures, describing a recent discovery involving alien microbes capable of breaking down toxic waste. "That's amazing," Amelia said distractedly, picking at her food. Her father smiled proudly. "It is, isn't it? Imagine the possibilities if we could harness that technology. It'd solve so many problems here on the station and maybe even back on Earth." Amelia nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. She thought about Krell and how much knowledge he carried within him. Knowledge that went unnoticed because people dismissed him based on his appearance. What if others like him held answers to questions humanity hadn't even thought to ask? Mother, noticing her distraction, leaned forward. "Is everything all right, sweetie? You seem preoccupied." Amelia hesitated, unsure how much to share. Finally, she said, "There's this kid at school. He's different. And people treat him really badly, like they won't give him a chance at all." Her mother frowned sympathetically. "Sounds tough. Have you tried talking to him?" Little Amelia admitted. "But it's hard. Everyone else acts like he doesn't exist, or worse, like he's some kind of joke." Her father set down his fork, his expression serious. "You know, when I first started working with alien ecosystems, a lot of people thought I was crazy. They didn't understand why I cared so much about creatures that seemed so alien to us. But the more I learned, the more I realized how much we have to gain by embracing those differences." Amelia listened intently, finding comfort in her father's words. "Do you ever get tired of fighting against people who don't believe you?" "All the time," he admitted with a chuckle. "But sometimes you just have to do what's right, even if it's scary." Those words stuck with Amelia long after dinner ended. Lying in bed later that night, she replayed the conversation in her mind. Doing what's right, Evan, if it's scary. It sounded simple enough, but putting it into action was another story. Still, as she drifted off to sleep, one thought gave her hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could make a difference. One small step at a time. The next few days passed quietly for Amelia, though she couldn't shake the tension that lingered in the air. After her brief confrontation with Brad, things felt different, more charged. Like an invisible storm brewing just beneath the surface. She noticed subtle changes in how people treated her. Some students gave her curious glances, their expressions a mix of confusion and admiration. Others avoided her altogether, whispering behind her back, or rolling their eyes when she walked. Brad, meanwhile, kept his distance, but made sure to let his displeasure be known. Whenever their paths crossed in the hallway, he shot her a smirk or muttered something under his breath loud enough for her to hear. "Still hanging out with Blob?" I'd say. Or "Guess you're trying to start your own alien fan club." His words stung, but Amelia refused to let him see her flinch. Instead, she focused on Krell, determined to show him that not everyone judged him based on his appearance. Krell, for his part, seemed cautiously optimistic. He didn't say much about Amelia's decision to partner with him during biology class. But his gratitude was evident in small ways. When they passed each other in the hallways, he would nod politely or offer a shy smile. Once, he even thanked her again, his voice barely above a whisper. "You did not have to help me," he said. "But I am glad you did." Amelia shrugged, trying to downplay her actions. "It's no big deal. You're smart, Krell. People should give you a chance to show it." Krell tilted his head slightly, as if considering her words. "Not many humans think like you," he said softly. "Most fear what they do not understand." "Well, maybe they're wrong," Amelia replied. Firmly, fear doesn't have to win. Though their interactions remained brief, Amelia found herself looking forward to seeing Krell around school. Each encounter gave her a tiny sense of purpose, a reminder that kindness, even in small doses, could make a difference. Still, she knew there was more work to be done. Helping Krell wasn't just about standing up to bullies. It was about showing others that differences weren't something to fear. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling math test, Amelia decided to take things a step further. During lunch, instead of sitting alone at her usual table, she approached Krell, who was, once again, eating by himself in the corner of the cafeteria. Her tray clinked softly as she set it down across from him. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, smiling warmly. Krell blinked in surprise, his fork hovering halfway to his mouth. "You want to sit here? With me?" Yeah, Amelia said simply. Why not? For a moment Krell looked uncertain, as if waiting for the punchline of some cruel joke. But when Amelia didn't move or laugh, he nodded slowly. Okay. As they ate, Amelia tried to keep the conversation light, asking Krell questions about his home planet and sharing stories about her life on Earth. At first, Krell responded hesitantly, his answers short and guarded. But as the minutes ticked by, he began opening up, describing the vibrant colors of his world's twin sunsets and the strange creatures that roamed its forests. It sounds beautiful, Amelia said sincerely. I'd love to visit someday, Krell's tentacles twitched slightly, a sign Amelia had come to recognize as excitement. Maybe you will, he said. If humans and my people can find more common ground, Amelia smiled, though the weight of his words lingered in her mind. Common ground wasn't easy not here, and certainly not on a larger scale. But she believed it was possible, especially if people like her took the first step. Their lunchtime chat drew a few curious stares from nearby tables. But Amelia ignored them. She focused on Krell, making sure he felt comfortable. For the first time in weeks, he finished his meal without interruption, shoulders relaxed, and his posture less tense. Word of Amelia's friendship with Krell spread quickly through the school. By the end of the week, rumors were flying. Some students admired her bravery, calling her the girl who stood up to Brad. Others mocked her, labeling her a traitor for associating with someone so weird. The divide grew wider. Splitting the student body into factions, Lily, Amelia's bubbly roommate, brought it up one evening while they studied in their shared quarters. So, I heard you've been hanging out with Krell, she said casually. Flipping through her textbook, Amelia glanced up, surprised. Yeah, why? Lily shrugged, avoiding eye contact. No reason. Just be careful, okay? People are talking. Kind of talk? Amelia asked, though she already knew the answer. You know how it is, Lily replied evasively. Some kids think you're cool for sticking up for him. Others, well, they don't. Amelia sighed, setting her pencil down. Let them talk. It doesn't change anything. But it could, Lily insisted. We don't want to get caught in the middle of all this drama, especially with Brad involved. Amelia frowned, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Since when do you care what Brad thinks? I don't, Lily snapped, then softened. Look, I'm just saying. Sometimes it's easier to go along with the crowd. Standing out too much can make things harder for you. Amelia stared at her roommate, disappointment creeping into her chest. She had hoped Lily would understand, maybe even support her. But instead, she sounded like everyone else, afraid to rock the boat. I'll take my chances, Amelia said finally, picking up her pencil again. If doing the right thing makes me stand out, then so be it. Lily didn't respond, but the tension between them lingered long after their study session ended. Despite the growing whispers and stares, Amelia continued reaching out to Krell. She invited him to join her during breaks, introduced him to a few of her classmates, and encouraged him to participate in group discussions. Slowly but surely, Krell began stepping out of his shell. He started raising his hand in class, offering insights that impressed both teachers and peers. His confidence grew, and with it came a newfound respect from some of the students who had once dismissed him. Not everyone warmed up to him, of course. Brad and his friends remained hostile, their teasing escalating whenever they saw Krell and Amelia together. But Amelia refused to let their negativity bring her down. Every time Brad mocked them, she reminded herself why she had chosen this path, to prove that kindness mattered more than fear. One day, during gym class, the teacher announced a team-building exercise involving zero-gravity chambers. Students were divided into groups and tasked with navigating obstacle courses while floating weightlessly. Predictably, no one wanted Krell on their team. When the instructor asked for volunteers, Amelia stepped forward without hesitation. I'll take him, she said, meeting the teacher's gaze steadily. A ripple of murmurs swept through the room. Brad rolled his eyes dramatically, muttering something about blob lover under his breath. But Amelia ignored him, focusing instead on Krell, who looked both surprised and grateful. You don't have to do this, Krell whispered as they suited up for the activity. Yes, I do, Amelia replied firmly. Besides, we're a good team. Remember, inside the chamber, the exercise proved challenging but fun. Krell's natural agility in low-gravity environments gave their team an unexpected edge, and Amelia's quick thinking helped them solve puzzles faster than anyone expected. By the end of the session, they had earned second place, a feat that earned applause from their classmates and praise from the teacher. As they floated back to the starting platform, Krell turned to Amelia, his large eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you, he said simply. For believing in me, Amelia grinned. Anytime. By the end of the week, Amelia noticed a shift in the atmosphere. While not everyone accepted Krell, fewer students openly ridiculed him. A handful even began approaching him, asking questions about his culture, or complimenting his problem-solving skills. It wasn't perfect, but it was progressing for Amelia. That was enough. Late one night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Amelia reflected on everything that had happened. Standing up for Krell hadn't been easy. It certainly hadn't solved all the problems at Horizon 7, but it had shown her something important. Courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about acting despite fear. Sometimes even the smallest acts of kindness could spark real change. With that thought, Amelia drifted off to sleep, hopeful for what the future might hold for Krell. For herself, and for everyone else, brave enough to embrace differences instead of fearing them. The weeks passed, and Amelia's bond with Krell grew stronger. They weren't best friends. Krell was still shy, and Amelia respected his need for space, but they had formed a quiet partnership. She continued to include him in group activities, defend him when bullies mocked him, and encourage him to share his thoughts in class. In return, Krell showed her glimpses of his world, describing the wonders of his home planet and teaching her phrases in his native language. Their friendship became a small but steady light in the often harsh environment of Horizon 7 High. But as much as things improved for Krell, the tension between Amelia and Brad only worsened. Brad didn't like being challenged, especially by someone he saw as beneath him. To him, Amelia's growing closeness with Krell wasn't just annoying, it was a direct threat to his authority. He thrived on control, on being the center of attention, and Amelia's actions disrupted that. So, he decided to take matters into his own hands. One afternoon, during a free period, Brad gathered his usual crew near the school's main hallway. Ryan, his lanky sidekick, leaned against the wall while two other boys stood nearby, nodding along as Brad outlined his plan. We need to teach Blob Lover a lesson, Brad said, his voice low but sharp. She thinks she's better than us, because she hangs out with freaks. It's time we remind her where she belongs, Ryan smirked. What did you have in mind? Brad grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. Something big, something public. We'll make sure everyone sees what happens when you step out of line. Amelia noticed the change in Brad's demeanor almost immediately. For days, he had ignored her, content to mutter insults under his breath or shoot her dirty looks from across the room. But now, he seemed more focused, watching her every move with an intensity that made her uneasy. When their paths crossed in the hallways, his smirks carried a new edge, as if he were waiting for something to happen. She tried not to let it bother her, reminding herself that fear only gave bullies power. Still, a nagging sense of unease followed her throughout the day. By the time Friday rolled around, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was coming. It arrived sooner than she expected that afternoon. The school announced a special assembly to celebrate cultural diversity on Horizon 7. Students from different species were encouraged to showcase their traditions through performances, presentations, or demonstrations. The event was meant to foster unity and understanding, a noble goal. Though many students treated it as just another excuse to skip class, when the sign-up sheet went up, Krell hesitated. He wanted to participate, to share a piece of his culture with the school, but the thought of standing in front of so many judgmental eyes terrified him. Amelia noticed his hesitation and offered gentle encouragement. You'd be amazing, she told him during lunch. Your dance sounds incredible, plus it might help people see you differently. Krell shook his head, his tentacles curling nervously. They will laugh at me, he said quietly. Or worse, they won't. Amelia insisted. And even if they do, I'll be right there with you. You're not alone. After a long pause, Krell nodded. Okay, I will try. The day of the assembly arrived, and the school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Students filled the seats, chatting loudly as teachers scrambled to set up the stage. Posters decorated the walls, celebrating the theme of unity and diversity. Amelia sat near the front, close enough to offer Krell support but far enough to give him space. She glanced toward the backstage area, where Krell waited nervously, adjusting his traditional robes. As the program began, various acts took the stage musical. Performances, storytelling sessions, and even a demonstration of zero-gravity martial arts. The audience clapped politely, though some students whispered jokes or scrolled through their devices, clearly uninterested. Finally, it was Krell's turn. The lights dimmed and soft music played over the speakers, a haunting melody that seemed to echo through the room. Krell stepped onto the stage, his shimmering blue skin catching the glow of the spotlights. His movements were fluid and graceful, each step deliberate as he performed a traditional dance from his homeworld. The audience fell silent, captivated by the beauty of his performance. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Krell's confidence grew with each passing second, his earlier fears melting away. Amelia watched proudly, her heart swelling with admiration. This was exactly what she had hoped for, a chance for others to see Krell for who he truly was. But then, disaster struck. A sudden flicker in the stage lights caused the room to darken unexpectedly. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the music stuttered and stopped. Before anyone could react, the lights began flashing erratically, bathing the stage in harsh, disorienting bursts of color. Krell froze, overwhelmed by the chaos. His tentacles twitched uncontrollably, and he stumbled, nearly falling off the edge of the platform. Laughter erupted from the audience, cruel and mocking. Some students pointed at Krell, their gears cutting through the confusion. "Look at Blob," one voice called out. "He can't even handle a little light show." Amelia's stomach dropped. She knew this wasn't an accident. Someone had sabotaged. The equipment hand, she had a pretty good idea who. Without thinking, she stood up and rushed toward the stage. Pushing past startled students, she climbed the steps and reached Krell just as he regained his footing. "Are you okay?" she asked urgently, placing a hand on his arm. Krell blinked rapidly, his large eyes wide with panic. I do not know what happened." "It's not your fault," Amelia assured him. Turning to face the audience, she grabbed a nearby microphone and spoke firmly. "This wasn't part of the performance. What happened here was wrong, and it wasn't fair." Her words silenced the laughter, leaving only stunned silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, a few students began nodding in agreement. Others murmured apologies, realizing how cruel their reactions had been. Brad, however, wasn't ready to back down. From the middle of the crowd, he shouted, "Oh, come on! You're seriously defending this? It's just a joke." Amelia locked eyes with him, her voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside her. "No, it's not. It's bullying, and it stops now." Her declaration sparked a reaction. A handful of students stood up, joining Amelia on stage. One boy stepped forward, holding out a hand to Krell. "You were great," he said sincerely. "Don't let them ruin it for you." Others followed suit, forming a protective circle around Krell. Even some teachers joined in, offering words of encouragement. For the first time, Krell found himself surrounded not by ridicule, but by support. With renewed determination, he straightened his posture and resumed his dance. The audience watched in awe, their earlier mockery replaced by genuine appreciation. When the final note faded, applause erupted, not the polite clapping from before, but thunderous cheers that echoed through the auditorium. Afterward, as students filed out of the room, Amelia pulled Krell aside. "You were amazing," she said, smiling warmly. "I'm so proud of you." Krell's tentacles relaxed, a sign of relief. "Thank you, Amelia. Without you, I would have given up." "You didn't give up," she replied. "You faced your fear and look what happened. People saw the real you." Krell nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. Not everyone. Some still hate me. Maybe, Amelia admitted. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you stayed true to yourself. That's what courage looks like. As they walked together toward the exit, Amelia spotted Brad lingering near the doorway. His arms were crossed, his jaw tight with frustration. For once, he didn't say a word. Instead, he turned and walked away, his friends trailing behind. Amelia watched him go, a mixture of triumph and sadness in her chest. Standing up to Brad hadn't fixed everything, not yet, but it had shown her something important. Change was possible, even in the smallest ways. And sometimes all it took was one person willing to take a stand. Later that evening, as Amelia lay in bed, she replayed the events of the day in her mind. Despite the challenges, she felt a sense of accomplishment. Helping Krell hadn't erased the problems at Horizon 7, but it had planted a seed, a reminder that kindness and courage could inspire others to follow suit. For the first time in weeks, sleep came easily to Amelia. As her eyes drifted shut, she allowed herself to dream of a future where differences were celebrated instead of feared. It wouldn't happen overnight, but with persistence and hope, maybe someday it would become reality. The days following the assembly brought a mix of emotions for Amelia and Krell. On one hand, there was a noticeable shift in how some students treated Krell. A few began greeting him in the hallways, or sitting near him during lunch. Others approached him with questions about his culture, genuinely curious after seeing his performance on stage. These small acts of kindness were like cracks in a wall that had stood firm for so long, letting light seep through. But not everyone welcomed the change. Brad and his friends remained hostile, their resentment simmering just beneath the surface. They avoided direct confrontations with Amelia. Now her boldness at the assembly had earned her grudging respect from some students, but they found other ways to make life difficult for Krell. Whispers followed him wherever he went, and snide comments slipped into conversations when teachers weren't listening. Amelia noticed these lingering tensions but chose to focus on the positives. She encouraged Krell to keep sharing parts of his world, believing that familiarity could break down barriers. Together, they brainstormed ideas for future presentations, hoping to build on the momentum from the assembly. People are starting to see you differently, Amelia told him one afternoon as they studied in the library. That's a good thing. Krell nodded, though his tentacles twitched slightly, a sign of unease. Yes, but not everyone is ready to accept me. Some still hate me, I know, Amelia admitted. But progress takes time. You've already made more of an impact than you realize. Her words seemed to comfort him, and he smiled faintly. Still, both of them knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Brad wasn't about to let Amelia's actions go unpunished. He stewed over what had happened at the assembly, replaying the moment when she called out his sabotage in front of the entire school. It infuriated him not just because it embarrassed him, but because it challenged his authority. In his mind, Horizon 7 High belonged to him and his crew. No one else got to decide who deserved respect or attention. Determined to regain control, Brad devised a new plan. This time, he wouldn't rely on subtle tricks like tampering with equipment. Instead, he decided to strike where it hurt most: Krell's reputation. If he could turn the rest of the student body against Krell completely, Amelia's efforts would crumble. It started with rumors. Brad spread stories about Krell being dangerous, claiming he carried diseases unique to his species, or that his tentacles secreted harmful chemicals. At first, no one took the gossip seriously. It sounded too absurd to believe. But Brad persisted, planting seeds of doubt in vulnerable minds. Think about it, he'd say casually during group projects or lunch breaks. Do we really know anything about him? What if he's hiding something? His words preyed on people's fears, tapping into the same mistrust that had isolated Krell in the first place. Slowly, some students began distancing themselves again, unsure whether the rumors held any truth, even those who had warmed up to. Krell hesitated, afraid of taking sides in case Brad was right. Amelia saw the damage almost immediately. One day she arrived at lunch to find Krell sitting alone once more, his tray untouched. When she asked what was wrong, He hesitated before admitting, "People are avoiding me again. They think I am. It's unsafe." "That's ridiculous," Amelia exclaimed, anger flaring at her chest. "You're not dangerous, Brad's lying." Krell sighed, his large eyes filled with sadness. "Maybe, but lies can feel true if enough people believe them." Amelia clenched her fists under the table, frustration bubbling inside her. "We can't let him win. We have to fight back." "But how?" Krell asked softly. "He has everyone scared." Amelia didn't have an answer right away. Her determination, she knew, confronting Brad directly, wouldn't solve the problem. The rumors had taken root, and disproving them required more than just shouting the truth. She needed a strategy, one that would expose Brad's manipulation while restoring trust in Krell. That evening, Amelia turned to her father for advice. Dr. Carter had spent years studying alien ecosystems, navigating misunderstandings and prejudices. Along the way, over dinner, she explained the situation, careful to leave out names. "There's this kid at school who's being targeted because of where he comes from," she said. "People are spreading lies about him, and it's making others afraid. How do you deal with stuff like that?" Dr. Carter leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "Fear thrives on ignorance," he replied. "When people don't understand something, they fill in the gaps with assumptions, or worse, with whatever someone else tells them. To counteract that, you need to replace fear with knowledge." "What does that mean?" Amelia asked. "It means showing people the truth in a way they can't ignore," her father explained. "Education is powerful. If you can demonstrate why those lies are false and highlight the value of understanding differences, you might be able to change their perspective." Amelia nodded slowly, considering his words. "So, instead of arguing with them, I show them proof." "Exactly," Dr. Carter said with a smile. "Sometimes actions speak louder than words." Inspired by her father's advice, Amelia returned to school the next day with a plan. She enlisted Krell's help, explaining her idea during biology class. "We'll host another presentation," she said, "but this time we'll focus on facts. We'll explain your biology, your culture, everything that makes you unique. And we'll invite everyone to ask questions." Krell looked nervous, but agreed, "If it will help, I will try." Together, they worked tirelessly over the next few days, gathering information and preparing visuals for their presentation. Amelia reached out to her father for additional resources, borrowing diagrams and samples from his lab. By the time they were ready, their project had grown into something far bigger than either of them had imagined. The day of the presentation arrived, and the classroom buzzed with anticipation. Word had spread quickly about Amelia and Krell's event, drawing a larger crowd than usual. Students packed the rows of desks, whispering among themselves as they waited. Some came out of curiosity, others out of skepticism, but all were eager to see what Krell and Amelia had prepared. When the lights dimmed and the projector flickered to life, Amelia stepped forward to introduce the session. "Today we're going to talk about Krell's species," she began, her voice calm but confident. "A lot of rumors have been spreading lately, so we want to set the record straight. Knowledge is key to overcoming fear, and that's what this is all about." She handed the floor to Krell, who took a deep breath before launching into his explanation. Using slides and props, he described his anatomy, dispelling myths about his supposed dangers. His tentacles, he explained, were harmless sensory organs used for communication and balance. As for diseases, his species actually had stronger immune systems than humans, making them less likely to carry illnesses. To demonstrate further, Amelia brought out a sample of glowing moss native to Krell's planet. "This is food from his homeworld," she said, holding it up for everyone to see. "It's nutritious, safe, and even tastes good. Anyone want to try?" A few brave students raised their hands, accepting small pieces of the moss. Their reactions ranged from surprise to delight, breaking the tension in the room. Laughter replaced whispers as classmates shared their impressions. Bonding over the unusual treat, by the end of the presentation, the atmosphere had transformed. Questions poured in, genuine and thoughtful, as students sought to learn more about Krell's culture. For the first time, Many realized how much they had misunderstood and how much they had missed by judging him based on appearances. Afterward, Amelia and Krell stood together near the door, watching as students filed out. Several stopped to thank them, their earlier skepticism replaced by gratitude. Even Lily, Amelia's roommate, lingered behind to apologize. "I'm sorry I doubted you," she said quietly. "You were right. People just needed to understand." Amelia smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. "Thanks for saying that. It means a lot." As the last student left, Krell turned to Amelia, his tentacles relaxed and his expression brighter than she had ever seen it. "You did it," he said softly. "You showed them the truth." "You did it," Amelia corrected, placing a hand on his shoulder. "And we're not done yet, though challenges still lay ahead." Amelia felt hopeful. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but every step forward mattered. With courage, patience, and persistence, she believed they could continue, chipping away at the walls of fear and misunderstanding, one act of kindness at a time. The days that followed the presentation marked a turning point at Horizon 7. Hi. While not everyone warmed up to Krell overnight, the atmosphere began to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. Students who had once ignored him or whispered behind his back now greeted him with nods or smiles. Some even joined him during lunch, asking questions about his planet and sharing stories of their own. The rumors Brad had spread started to lose their grip as more people learned the truth, but Brad wasn't ready to give up. His ego was bruised, his influence weakened by Amelia and Krell's success. He couldn't stand seeing them celebrated, while he faded into the background. So, he decided to make one final, desperate move, a prank meant to humiliate Krell in front of the entire school. It happened on the day of the annual cultural festival, an event that brought together students, teachers, and families from across the galaxy. Booths lined the hallways, showcasing foods, crafts, and traditions from different species. Music played over the speakers and laughter filled the air as students mingled freely. For once, the tension between groups seemed to melt away, replaced by excitement and curiosity. Krell had been invited to perform his traditional dance again, this time on a larger stage set up in the main atrium. Amelia helped him prepare, adjusting his robes and offering words of encouragement. "You've got this," she said, squeezing his shoulder. "Everyone's here to celebrate, not to judge." Krell nodded, though his tentacles twitched nervously. "I hope so." As they made their way to the stage, Brad lingered nearby, watching with a smirk. He had spent hours rigging the equipment earlier that morning, planting devices designed to disrupt the performance. When the lights dimmed and the music began, he slipped into the shadows, waiting for chaos to unfold. At first, everything went smoothly. Krell stepped onto the stage, his movements graceful and mesmerizing. The audience fell silent, captivated by the beauty of his dance. But then, just as before, the lights flickered wildly, throwing harsh flashes across the room. The music stuttered and stopped, leaving only eerie silence. For a moment, Krell froze, caught off guard by the sudden disruption. Then, loud boos erupted from the crowd. Some students laughed, pointing at Krell and shouting insults. Others looked confused, unsure what was happening. Panic spread through the atrium as people scrambled to figure out the source of the problem. Amelia watched from the sidelines, her heart sinking. She knew instantly who was responsible. Pushing through the crowd, she climbed onto the stage and stood beside Krell. Her voice rang out clearly over the noise. "Stop! This isn't part of the performance." The audience quieted slightly, turning their attention to her. "Someone sabotaged the equipment," Amelia continued, her tone firm. "This was done on purpose, to embarrass Krell and ruin the festival." A murmur rippled through the crowd. People exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement while others remained skeptical. From the back of the room, Brad shouted, "Oh, come on. You're blaming us for technical problems? Give me a break." Amelia didn't flinch. Instead, she turned to face the audience directly. "Think about it. Who benefits from making Krell look bad? Who has been spreading lies and trying to turn everyone against him?" Her words struck a chord. Several students glanced toward Brad, their expressions shifting from amusement to suspicion. One boy called out, "She's right. Brad's always messing with Krell. Encouraged by the growing support, Amelia pressed on. We can't let fear and bullying win. Krell deserves respect, just like anyone else. If we don't stand up now, nothing will change. Her speech inspired action. A group of students stepped forward, joining Amelia and Krell on stage. One girl held up her hand and said loudly, I believe in Krell. He's brave, and he works harder than any of us. Another boy added, Yeah, and his dance is amazing. Let's finish this the right way. The tide turned completely when a teacher intervened. Confirming Amelia's suspicions, Mr. Henson, the biology instructor, approached the soundboard and discovered evidence of tampering. Holding up a small device, he announced, This was planted. Here, deliberately. Whoever did this needs to take responsibility. All eyes turned to Brad, whose smug grin faltered. For the first time, he looked uncertain, his confidence crumbling under the weight of collective judgment. His friends backed, away unwilling to be associated with his actions. Finally, Brad muttered something under his breath and stormed out of the atrium. It's defeated. With the sabotage exposed, the festival resumed. Krell finished his dance to thunderous applause, his confidence restored by the outpouring of support. As the music swelled and the lights stabilized, the audience cheered, celebrating not just Krell's talent, but the unity that had emerged in the face of adversity. Later that evening, Amelia found Krell sitting alone near the observation deck. Gazing out at the stars, she joined him, leaning against the railing as they shared a quiet moment. How are you feeling? She asked gently. Krell smiled, his large eyes reflecting the glow of distant planets. Happy. Relieved. I never thought so many people would stand up for me. Me neither, Amelia admitted. But I guess sometimes all it takes is one person to start something bigger. You were that person, Krell said softly.
Got that.
You, Amelia, for everything. Amelia shrugged, brushing off the praise. I didn't do it alone. Lots of people help, two included. You showed everyone how strong you are. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the cosmos stretch endlessly before them. Then Krell spoke again, his voice thoughtful. Do you think things will keep getting better? I hope so, Amelia replied. It won't be easy. There will still be challenges, and not everyone will change overnight. But today proved that kindness and courage can make a difference. That's a start. Krell nodded, his tentacles relaxing in contentment. Yes, a good start. The weeks that followed, life at Horizon 7, High, continued to evolve. Brad faced consequences for his actions, including detention and mandatory counseling sessions on empathy and diversity. Though he remained bitter, his influence waned significantly. Without his constant negativity, other students felt freer. To embrace differences rather than fear them, Krell, meanwhile, thrived. Again, encouraged by the newfound acceptance, he became more involved in school activities, even helping organize future cultural events. His confidence grew, and with it came opportunities to share his knowledge and talents with others. Teachers praised his contributions, and classmates sought his input on projects. Recognizing the value of his unique perspective, Amelia also noticed changes within herself. Standing up for Krell had taught her the power of resilience and the importance of leading by example. She no longer shied away from challenges, knowing that even small acts of bravery could inspire others. Her friendship with Krell deepened, becoming a cornerstone of her experience at Horizon-7. One evening, as Amelia prepared for bed, she reflected on everything that had happened. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, frustration, and fear, but it had been worth it. Helping Krell hadn't just changed his life, it had changed hers too. Lying awake, she stared at the ceiling, letting her thoughts drift to the stars outside her window. Somewhere out there, countless worlds existed, each with its own wonders and mysteries. The galaxy was vast and diverse, full of possibilities waiting to be explored. And maybe, just maybe, humanity and all the species sharing this corner of space could learn to celebrate those differences instead of fearing them. With that hopeful vision in mind, Amelia drifted off to sleep, dreaming of a future where kindness triumphed over cruelty and understanding bridged the gaps between worlds.